YouTube? We're back for another pause. This is pause number 20. Let me look at my notes. 22. Nothing is wasted. And this is about the idea that art can be a form of expression in times of upheaval. And, I wanted to talk about this because there's, as we all know, lots been going on in the world. So that's not a news flash to anyone. And let me also say my name is Robin McClendon. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the pauses we've been doing since the beginning of the year. We're doing one a week in our pause journal. Many of us created the journals, and you guys are on this journey with me, putting art as a response to not only our own growth, our own introspection, and working on this as a way to balance out our neurological systems, to help with deregulation, everything that happens in the world that causes us to stay in our sympathetic, the fight and flight, and not in our parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, which is where we're designed to be the majority of the time, except for when we need to fight or flight, So I'm finding that this has been really balancing for me as a working artist, and also an art educator who loves sharing with my community the various art techniques and what have you. And many of you have been on my YouTube channel for the last decade, and it's loaded with art techniques. And I've done that for quite a long time. And there's many, many, many videos that you can go back and check out techniques on gel printing, book arts, collage, mark making. But this year I wanted to diverge from doing tutorials and techniques on YouTube and really go into talking about our story, our art mythos, the visual storytelling, and visual dialogues around that storytelling. And art, traditionally, artists in art communities was using art as a self-expression to what they were thinking and feeling about their world, their environment. It was no different than a musician or a writer writing about what was going on for them within their cultural diasporas and sharing that out. And we go back now, we listen to the music, we read these books, and it tells us something about what was going on 20, 40, 100 years ago. And it's the same is true with visual artists. If you really go into the various artistic periods, you'll find that many of them, and most of them, are an expression of what was going on culturally. So there's many, many times in history where there are various art movements that were formed out of this sort of chaotic and very virulent, kind of energy that we're experiencing right now. So what we're experiencing right now is not new to humanity. Honestly, it may just feel a bit new to us. So if you think about traditions like Dadaism, Art Povera, if we think about G's Bend, quilt makers, there's a number of them. These were all out of periods of some sort of chaos or revolution. So if you think about Dadaism, that happened in the early 1900s, like around 1915, 16 or so, all the way through the 40s. So that would have been around World War I, through the Depression years. And that was a response to breaking, artists were breaking culture down to the smallest fragment of understanding. And so they were saying everything was important, like the smallest thing was important. And so the idea of Dada, which is a baby's first words, that's a beginning point. That's a point in which communication is beginning. And even at that smallest point, it has this importance. And so they were dealing with the idea of let's reduce everything to the least common denominator, right? And build back from that. So then if you have something like Art Povera, which was an Italian movement in the 60s and 70s, and that was around, of course, around the time of the Vietnam War, and a lot of, civil unrest in across the globe. And so that movement was about, it literally translated as poor art, but not poor as necessarily as economical. Not so much artists were poor themselves, but and not to say they weren't, but that wasn't the point they were making. They were talking about how it had a lot to do about the response of globalism, of technology, everything being slick and shiny and new, and everything was about the new and what have you. And these artists were joining forces against all of that, and so their response to all this new and shiny and slick and and this divergence away from cultural history and importance of the everyday. They used a lot of rags and found objects and concrete and torn fabrics and everything in the work. And so they were using the poorest of objects, the objects of the poor, to do this expression of this idea of globalism, this idea of shiny and slick. It's just not for everyone. Everybody can't afford it. And we can't discard those things that people already have, because this is what they have, this is what they can afford. And it's the idea of pushing on consumerism. It was a response against that. So, and even with Gee's Ben, that started somewhere around the 30s, I want to say, and went through to about the 70s. So it spanned, the Great Depression, through a lot of the Civil Rights Movement, etc. So these were a group of African American women in Gee's Ben, Georgia, and they were creating these amazing quilts that were really very graphic, just very bold and simplistic. They weren't like on the traditional star and pattern and different. They just basically were cutting up old clothes, corduroys and old work pants and that, and they just put them into these massive quilts, and they were doing quilting bees. And so they were creating these massive quilts. I actually saw an exhibition of these Gee's Ben's quilts at the Corcoran a long time ago, 30 years ago, I think, when I first saw this exhibition. And they were just absolutely, they just stopped you in your tracks. It was something about these quilts, like you could feel the energy and the emotions that these women were putting into these quilts as a response to the historical relationship of African Americans to their country. And it was quite incredible. So this idea of nothing is wasted is very much a part of a lot of the art movements. And even those of you who've been following me know that, I have, I often use the hashtag post-consumer art with the idea that, and I started that in the, during the pandemic years, the 2020 or so, when I was dealing with all this stuff coming in, all these Amazon boxes and packages and everything coming from everywhere, because all you could do was order online. And I just didn't feel good about just constantly throwing this stuff away. So I started keeping it and began to make books and collages and other art out of them, and elevate them to the point that if you were to see these, you wouldn't even know that that these were made out of this throwaway stuff. And so and it's something that many of us were doing this and still continue to do this in my community. You guys who follow me know I'm really big on, the reuse of this stuff. But that came out of a pandemic. For me, it came out of this feeling of, I'm just tired of throwing all this stuff away. And I'm forced to purchase like this because I've got to stay in. And we all experience that. So we have a connection to what some of these other earlier movements were all about. And so I think we can relate to it at that place. So this idea of nothing wasted has a lot to do not only with physical objects, but it's a lot to do with emotional, cultural, this sort of, this sort of existential response to everything that's going on around us. And it's very easy to throw a lot of that stuff away. It's very easy to say, well, that doesn't matter, or I'm okay, or, like you stuff your feelings and stuff your emotions, but they just keep on coming up. And at a point, our bodies can't handle it so much. So what's interesting about this is I was preparing from the week before, which was that pause was sacred weirdness. In our Ikkyujin, right? I was moving into this idea of nothing being wasted. And that happened because I was telling myself in that week, I was doing that. I'm thinking about all the things I want to do, and I'm sort of making these promises to myself. And one of them was that I wanted to get back into like a regular sort of exercise program. I walk my dogs in the morning and the evening, but I really had kind of moved away from doing yoga several times a week, my Tai Chi once a week. And I had been most days really challenging myself to the 10,000 steps. And I've dropped down, below 5,000 steps a day. And, I was just saying, that's not acceptable, Robin. And so I said, you know what? I got a gym membership at our local, it's like a recreation center. And they have a pool. They have it's a new facility. They have a wonderful walking path and rooms for yoga, this thing and that thing, and just, exercise rooms. So, okay, this is perfect. So on Monday of the week before, I looked at the calendar, went on and did my yoga, and said, okay, I'm going to do something every day. If I don't do anything but go up, and because it's just 5 minutes from my house, just go up and do the walking track first thing in the morning. I'm an early person. I walk the dog about 5:30. So around 6:15 or so, I can get up there, walk that track, and get at least, 8,000 steps in. Because I naturally do 2 to 4. So if I just go and purpose every morning to get 8,000 in, what's that, like an hour? It doesn't really take that long to walk those steps, but it's like doing them. And then do a little arms, a little legs, and I'm done for the day. So, like in an hour and a half, I've made a commitment to my body, to my well-being, to balancing and regulating my neurological system, because that's what exercise does, to stimulating my brain and the blood coursing through my body, cleaning and clearing the blood, and just really refreshing myself and setting myself for the day in the studio. So day 1, I went up there. Day 2, I had an excuse. Day 3, I'll get to it. I've got these videos to make and all this kind of stuff, because I have no excuse getting in my studio. I'm good with that. And what happened on day 4, I had to move my studio around, and I really went in there and did a big job of cleaning, clearing, and organizing everything, and putting piles of stuff together that I'm going to get rid of, and really clearing out my painting space so that it was clean and clear, and I actually got some painting done. So when I got up on Friday morning and started to move, I could feel my sciatica was just like this, and I thought, oh my goodness. And I went to walk, and it just felt like my right side just was like, nope, it just seized. And you've had sciatica pain, you know what I'm talking about. And I haven't had sciatica problems for close to 10 years. So I thought, oh my goodness, I went to see my physical therapist on Saturday, and he was just like, okay, he did some adjustments. He's like, you're just going to have to just stay off it for a while and let it heal. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, because it was in so much pain, and so I had to take some Advil, how, to deal with it. So that's all this past week. I was just literally, I just couldn't move. I was able to get a lot done here in my home studio. So when I was able to get up, I would literally, get to my table here, and I got a lot of videos made. I got a lot of books created. I did do that, but that's about all I could do. But that's what I do anyway. But what I don't always get done is prioritizing, you know, my downtime, relaxing, taking the day off, taking time off, going out and doing things that refresh my body and refresh my soul and refresh my mind. That I put on hold. And so this idea of even nothing is wasted, because even this experience where I felt I was wasting time, it really gave me a gift. It gave me a huge gift of realizing that this moment need to happen to really cause me to think about what I'm doing and think about my commitments, and then move into a space of sticking to those commitments. So even sometimes when we think something didn't turn out right, or that was a big waste of time, or that was a big waste of experience or money or whatever, a lot of times if you sit back and really reflect, it really isn't. It really isn't a waste. It's a lesson, and there's something in there for us. So this week I invite you to really think about this idea that there's nothing wasted, and you can bring that into your art, as I did in the journal here, and this is something that, you know, you've already seen the cutouts on me creating and working this, but this whole journal was about just taking stuff that just looked like it was wastes and just really tried to bring that onto the pages of the book. So let me take a few seconds to show you this page spread. So here we are. So right there, of course, I have my scripting here, and this one, it says, you know, nothing is wasted. I love that repeated script like that. But on this this newsprint, which was waste from my desk, you see how we got the bleed through? So we got this really nice palimpsest, or this old layering, like what you may see on a billboard, or, you know, that kind of thing, and just all the mark making and what have you. And this was a piece of tissue that I had been using to do some staining, and I put that out on this, and it just looks like something. This looks like something you could have found on the ground. This is a very, very old document I got in Portugal. See all the wormholes and everything in it. And there again, that's some really nice old stuff that, you know, other people would toss this paper out. I love it. And so, yeah, and what I wanted to do is not over design the page. I really wanted this to look like something that was just pure expression of valuing waste. So there we have it. I know it's probably a sort of a tricky topic and maybe in some ways, but I challenge you to really think about it, because I'm still healing from this that injury. I'm not able to like really still walk really far or really take the dog on a long walk, but I have committed that probably in the next day or so, I'm going to get up and start walking around that track. And maybe I won't do 8,000 steps the first day. I probably won't, because I want my body to heal, but I am going to start. So I'll check back in with you on this. You guys check in with me. Hold me accountable, because nothing is wasted. Even a solid week laying on my back, recuperating, is not wasted. So love you guys. Take care. Have a great, great week, and we'll see each other again next week. Bye-bye.